Okay, so today let's dive into Stoicism.
Ooh, interesting choice.
Yeah, it's actually super relevant to everyone. It's this whole philosophy about staying calm even when everything's crazy, finding strength inside yourself,
Right.
and actually thriving when things get tough. And the coolest thing is it's not some ancient dusty relic.
Yeah,
It's wisdom that you can use in your life today, like right now.
I like that.
I've been looking at this video script, Stoicism 101 for the modern person, and it is mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Has it ever happened to you where you felt totally overwhelmed by stuff you just can't control?
Oh, all the time.
Or you wish you could just press pause on your reactions to things?
Yeah,
Stoicism might actually have the answers.
I'm intrigued.
So what's really fascinating about Stoicism is it's not just theories, you know?
Right.
It was how people actually lived their lives,
Yeah.
like Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca.
Big names.
Huge names. Right.
Yeah.
And these guys, they dealt with real world pressure.
Oh, yeah.
Not so different from us today.
Exactly, and that's what makes their insights so fascinating.
Hmm.
I mean, they're surprisingly applicable to our modern lives.
It's wild to think about Marcus Aurelius, Roman emperor, finding time to write down his philosophical thoughts.
Yeah.
And his book Meditations, it's like a collection of personal pep talks
Yeah.
about staying grounded when everything is crazy, like ruling an empire.
Right.
This video, it highlights one of his big ideas, and it's that it's not the events themselves that make us suffer,
Right.
it's how we judge them.
That's deep.
It is, right?
Right.
It's a really powerful concept, and actually it really connects with modern psychology.
Absolutely.
Like CBT.
Oh, yeah. CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, it focuses on how our thoughts actually shape our feelings and behaviors,
Yeah.
right? One technique, it's called cognitive restructuring,
Uh-huh.
and it's all about identifying and challenging those unhelpful thought patterns that we all have.
Oh, I see.
It's almost like hitting the reset button on our thinking.
Oh, okay.
And if we think about this in relation to Stoicism, there's a very striking similarity with what Marcus Aurelius was saying about our judgments.
Okay, so let's make this really practical, right? Let's say you are stuck in traffic and you are so late for a really important meeting.
I've been there.
Right. So usually you might spiral and be like, oh, this is going to ruin my entire day. My boss is going to be so mad. But Marcus Aurelius would say, wait a minute, hold up. Is the traffic itself causing the suffering?
Good point.
Or is it your reaction to the traffic?
Right.
It's like he's asking us to separate the facts from all our emotional baggage.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's where Stoicism offers a practical solution.
Right.
It encourages us to shift our focus to what we can control, which in this case is our attitude,
Oh, I see.
and how we choose to use that time in traffic.
Okay.
And this brings us to another Stoic idea. It's the dichotomy of control.
Dichotomy of control. Okay.
Yeah, and you can actually visualize it like a Venn diagram.
Okay.
In one circle, we've got all the things we can control, our thoughts, actions, and efforts.
Right.
And in the other circle, we have the things we can't control. The weather, the traffic, other people's opinions, all of that.
Got it.
The key is to focus your energy on that first circle, the things we can actually influence.
So I'm already seeing how this could be a game changer.
Yeah.
But doesn't that mean just accepting anything that happens, like becoming a total doormat?
Not at all. Stoicism isn't about passive acceptance.
Okay.
It's about discerning what you can change and then taking purposeful action. It's about using your energy effectively. And this brings us to another Stoic heavyweight, Epictetus.
Epictetus, okay.
What makes his perspective so compelling is that he was a former slave. So someone who really, truly understood the limitations of external control.
Wow, yeah.
He really emphasized focusing on what we can control our inner world.
That's a pretty powerful perspective.
It is.
It adds a lot of weight to his philosophy. I'm starting to get the feeling that Stoicism isn't about suppressing your emotions.
Right.
It's more about choosing how you respond to them, right?
Absolutely.
Think about it this way. You're waiting for a super important email.
Mm-hmm.
And it's delayed. You can get all worked up and anxious, like checking your inbox every 5 seconds, which won't make it come any faster.
For sure.
Or you can acknowledge that you're feeling antsy, use that time to do something productive, and trust that the email will show up when it shows up.
Right.
You're still feeling the emotion, but it's not controlling you. It's about recognizing that you always have a choice in how you react.
Exactly. You always have that choice.
That's a really great point. It's not about being emotionless. It's about having more control over how you feel. And
Hmm.
this reminds me of something that we hear a lot in like personal development stuff, the circle of influence,
Oh, yes.
popularized by Stephen Covey.
Yeah, yeah.
It basically means focusing on the things you can actually impact, very similar to what Epictetus was teaching.
It's so interesting how these ancient philosophies connect with modern self-improvement ideas.
It is.
They all seem to point to this really empowering concept that we have way more control over our lives than we think.
Yeah.
And that control starts with recognizing the things that we can influence.
Hmm.
And that's a core concept in Stoicism.
Okay, so we've talked about Marcus Aurelius and how our judgments shape how we experience things. And then Epictetus with his focus on what we can control. Are we seeing a theme here?
Definitely.
Yeah.
It seems like Stoicism gives us this framework for dealing with life's ups and downs by focusing on our inner world.
Right.
And that leads us to another key Stoic figure, Seneca.
Okay, Seneca.
He was a Roman statesman who navigated like the really treacherous world of imperial politics.
I bet.
So he definitely knew a thing or two about pressure and uncertainty.
I can imagine.
The video highlights this idea of his that we suffer more often in imagination than in reality,
Okay.
which I think is so relevant today.
It's so true.
We scroll through social media, see everyone's like perfect highlight reels, and then end up feeling terrible about ourselves.
Totally.
We're constantly checking the news, bombarded by negativity, and we just feel anxious about things that we have absolutely no control over.
Yeah, it's like we're experts at creating these mental movies in our heads that are filled with anxieties and what ifs.
Exactly. And Seneca would probably tell us to hit pause on those mental movies and just come back to the present moment.
I like that.
You know, he also emphasized the importance of gratitude, even in a world that's obsessed with getting more and more and more.
Yeah.
He really believed in appreciating what you already have, which is a powerful antidote to that feeling of never enough that I think a lot of us feel.
It's so true. Seneca's wisdom actually reminds me of something I try to practice every day. I start each day by writing down 3 things I'm grateful for.
Oh, that's nice.
Some days it's big things like, my family, friends, my health. Other days it's little things like a really good cup of coffee or a sunny morning. It's a small thing, but it makes a big difference in my day.
That's great. You know, it's not just a feel-good activity. Studies show that gratitude is actually linked to more happiness, less stress, and even better physical health. So Seneca was onto something really profound with this emphasis on appreciating the good in your life.
It sounds like Stoicism isn't just about dealing with the negative. It's about cultivating a mindset that helps you thrive even when things are difficult.
I think that's a great way to put it.
This is all so insightful. It feels like we're building this powerful toolkit for a calmer and more intentional life.
I agree.
Okay, so we've got this amazing foundation with Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca. Where do we go from here?
Well, I think it's time we take these ancient ideas and see how we can actually apply them in our modern lives.
Yeah.
Luckily, this video script lays out 3 practical steps for putting Stoicism into action. Almost like a recipe for a more resilient you. Ready to try it out?
Yes, let's do it. Okay, so we're back and ready to unlock the practical side of Stoicism. Before we got into Seneca's wisdom, we were talking about how this video lays out these 3 steps for using Stoicism in our everyday lives, like a philosophical toolkit or something. Are you ready to open it up and see what's inside?
Absolutely. Let's see how these ancient tools fit into our modern world.
All right, step 1. Practicing the dichotomy of control. It might sound a little scary, but it's a really simple idea. It's about asking, can I control this thing or not?
Right.
If the answer is yes, then great, go for it, take action.
I like it.
But if the answer is no, then that's when you let it go.
Makes sense.
Like, for example, I can totally control if I spend, like, an hour on social media or use that time to learn something new.
Right.
But I can't control if my internet decides to go out. So it's about putting your energy where it actually makes a difference.
That's a great way to think about it. It's like you're being choosy with where you invest your energy. You're putting it into things you can actually influence. And step 2 kind of builds on that idea. It's about reframing how you look at things.
Yeah.
So when you run into a problem, you pause for a second and ask, is there another way to see this? It's like you're trying to find the hidden opportunity in something that seems negative.
Okay, so instead of thinking, ugh, my flight is delayed, I could try and think, well, now I have an extra hour to finally read that book I've been wanting to. But sometimes it's so hard to actually change your thinking, Do you have any, tips for making that reframing process easier?
Absolutely. One technique that can be helpful is to question those negative thoughts you're having. When your brain starts going, this is awful, or I can't deal with this,
Hmm.
just stop and ask yourself, is that even true? Like, what proof do I have for thinking that? And you'll often find that your first reaction is based more on your emotions than the actual facts.
So it's like you hit the pause button on all that drama in your head and try to see things clearly.
Exactly.
I love that. Okay, so we've got control what you can and reframe how you think about things. What's the third tool in this Stoic toolkit?
Well, step 3 is all about cultivating gratitude and virtue. It might sound kind of fluffy, but it's really powerful. It's about shifting your attention away from the things you don't have and focusing on appreciating what you already do have. And it goes deeper than just feeling thankful. It's about trying to live a life that's guided by your values and trying to be a good person.
Yeah, it reminds me of the idea that real happiness isn't about getting a ton of stuff or being famous, you know? It's about living in a way that matches your values and finding contentment in the present moment.
Exactly. And this is where Seneca's ideas about gratitude are so important. He knew that in a world that's always pushing us to want more, 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 learning to be content with what we have is really important.
I can see how these three steps work together like a dance or something. You accept the things you can't control, then you look at things differently to find the good, and then you really appreciate all the good things in your life.
I love that analogy. It really is a dynamic process, not just a set of rules. Now, I think it's time we put these Stoic tools to the test. Let's try some real-life situations and see how they work.
Perfect, let's get practical. Imagine you have a huge deadline at work. The pressure is on, and you're starting to doubt yourself. How would a Stoic handle that?
Well, first of all, they wouldn't pretend that the stress and pressure aren't real. Stoicism isn't about turning into some emotionless robot.
Right.
It's about recognizing your emotions and then choosing how you want to react to them.
So it's okay to feel stress, but not let it stop you.
Exactly. And this is where that dichotomy of control comes in. Which parts of the situation are actually in your control? You can control how much effort you put in, how focused you are, and how you manage your time.
Okay, yeah. So instead of freaking out about the deadline, I could break the project into smaller pieces, make a schedule that I can actually follow, and then just focus on doing my best one step at a time.
That's exactly how a Stoic would do it, breaking things down into manageable steps. But what if something unexpected happens, which, let's be honest, usually does?
Well, wouldn't I go back to that dichotomy of control idea? If it's something I can fix, I will. If not, then I just got to figure out how to adapt and keep going. This is making me realize how much of my stress is from worrying about things I can't even change.
That's exactly what Seneca was talking about when he said that we suffer more in our imaginations than we do in real life. We tend to play out these worst-case scenarios in our heads, which just adds more suffering to an already tough situation. A Stoic would try to stay in the present moment, focusing on what they could do right now to deal with the challenge.
It sounds like Stoicism is training to become more resilient, better at finding solutions, and less reactive to all the curveballs life throws at us.
That's a good way to put it.
But what about the emotional side of things? What if I'm feeling super anxious or overwhelmed by the pressure of this deadline? How can Stoicism help with that?
That's where reframing your perspective comes in handy. Instead of seeing the deadline as a threat or a source of stress, could you see it as a chance to learn, to grow, to prove to yourself that you can handle it?
I've never looked at it that way. Instead of thinking about everything that could go wrong, I could focus on the possibility of learning and growing, even if it's difficult. It's like choosing to see the good side instead of just the bad side.
That's the Stoic mindset right there. And don't forget about gratitude, even when you're stressed about a deadline. Maybe you're thankful that you get to work on such a challenging project, or that you have supportive colleagues, or even just that you have a job in the first place.
You know, what's really hitting me about Stoicism is this emphasis on taking responsibility. It's about realizing that we have more power over our thoughts, reactions, and basically our own well-being than we often think.
That's really insightful point. It's about taking ownership of your inner world, even when the world around you feels chaotic. And that sense of ownership can be incredibly empowering.
Okay, so we've talked about how Stoicism can work in a stressful job situation, but what about relationships? Those can be just as tough, if not tougher, than any deadline.
Oh, for sure. Let's say you have a friend who's always negative and complaining. It's draining to be around them, but you also care about them and don't want to just ditch them. How would a Stoic approach this tricky situation?
Well, I don't think just putting up with their negativity would be the stoic way to go,
Yeah,
right? It goes against the whole idea of focusing on what you can control, which in this case is your own emotional well-being.
you're absolutely right. A Stoic wouldn't just passively accept all that negativity. They'd see the importance of setting boundaries, protecting their own mental health, while still being a good friend. Remember, Stoicism emphasizes virtue, trying to be the best version of yourself in all your relationships.
So it's about finding that balance between being supportive and not letting their negativity drag you down.
Exactly. It's a bit of a balancing act. You could try suggesting activities that are more positive and upbeat, or subtly steer the conversation away from all the complaining. And don't forget, you can't control how your friend acts, but you can control your own actions and how you choose to interact with them.
And seeing how this all connects back to the idea of taking responsibility. It's not about blaming others for how we feel, but realizing that we have choices in how we react to the people around us.
And beyond managing our own reactions, Stoicism also encourages us to try to understand where other people are coming from. Instead of judging your friend harshly for being negative, try to see why they might be acting that way. Maybe they're going through something tough, or maybe they have some underlying anxieties that are fueling their negativity.
That's a good point. It's easy to judge, but Stoicism reminds us to be empathetic and understanding. It reminds me of that quote from Marcus Aurelius: "When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. They are like this because they can't tell good from evil."
That's such a great quote. It reminds us that everyone's operating from their own level of understanding. Judging them doesn't help anyone. It's about recognizing that we're all human and choosing to respond with compassion and patience.
This is really showing me how broad Stoicism really is. It's not just about surviving tough times. It's about giving us the tools to thrive in every part of life, from work to relationships and everything in between.
Absolutely. It's a framework for approaching life with more purpose, resilience, and clarity. It's about understanding that we have more agency than we think and using that agency to create a life that aligns with our values.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation so far. I feel like we've only just scratched the surface of what Stoicism has to offer. Where should we go next?
Well, I think it's time to dig deeper into Seneca's thoughts on worry and gratitude. After all, he was a pro at handling both the external pressures of politics and the internal pressures of our own minds.
Let's do it. I'm excited to learn more about what Seneca has to say.
So we're back and ready to really dig into the practical wisdom of Stoicism and how it can help us navigate the craziness of modern life. Before the break, we were just about to explore Seneca's thoughts on, worry and gratitude.
Yeah, Seneca's ideas are so relevant today, especially with how easily we get caught up in anxieties about the future and that constant need for more, more, more.
It's like our minds are these worry machines, right? They just don't stop. We scroll through social media, see all these perfect lives, and then feel terrible about ourselves.
Right.
We watch the news, get bombarded with all this negativity, and then worry about things we can't even control. It's exhausting.
And that's where Seneca's wisdom comes in. He said, we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. It's like, how much time do we spend making up these worst case scenarios in our heads? And that just makes us more anxious than we need to be. It's so true. We end up suffering twice, once in our heads, and then again if the thing actually happens. But even if it doesn't happen, we've already wasted all this energy worrying about it.
Exactly. Seneca would tell us to stop and question those anxious thoughts, bring our minds back to the present moment. He'd remind us that a lot of our suffering comes from our own thoughts, not necessarily what's actually happening.
So instead of getting carried away by all those what ifs, we can try to focus on what's happening right here, right now. It's like a way to ground ourselves and quiet all that mental noise.
Right. And along with managing worry, Seneca was also really big on gratitude. He knew that in a world obsessed with having more and more, being content with what you already have is so important. It's about focusing on what you have instead of what you don't, appreciating the good things no matter how small.
It reminds me of all the research on happiness. Studies show that people who practice gratitude regularly have less stress, less anxiety, sleep better, and even have stronger immune systems. It's like Seneca was way ahead of his time.
It's amazing how these ancient philosophies connect with modern science, isn't it?
It really is. It seems like Seneca just understood people so well.
He did.
Thinking about all this makes me wonder, if Seneca were alive today, what would he say about our obsession with productivity and achievement? We're always being told we need to do more, be more, achieve more. It's easy to get caught up in that.
That's a great question. I think Seneca would probably remind us that Real happiness doesn't come from all those achievements or having a ton of stuff. He might challenge us to rethink what success even means, to value things like inner peace and fulfillment more than what other people think.
Yeah, I can almost hear him saying, put down your phone, walk away from your to-do list, go take a walk in nature, appreciate the beauty around you, spend time with people you love, find joy in the simple things.
I think you nailed it. You'd want us to reconnect with what's really important, live more intentionally, and find contentment in the present moment, instead of always chasing something in the future.
This whole conversation has been a great reminder that Stoicism isn't just about surviving hard times, it's about thriving, even when things get tough. It's about developing a mindset that helps us face whatever comes our way with strength, clarity, and a sense of peace.
I agree. Stoicism gives us these timeless tools for dealing with life's ups and downs. Whether you're a Roman emperor dealing with political chaos or a modern person dealing with everyday stress.
And the best part is anyone can use it, no matter who they are or what they believe.
Exactly. It's a philosophy for everyone. It helps us make choices that are in line with our values and lead to a more fulfilling life.
Well, as we wrap up our deep dive into Stoicism, I'm feeling super inspired. We've explored the wisdom of Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca, and uncovered practical insights that can really help us navigate modern life.
It's been awesome discussing these ideas with you, and I hope our listeners feel inspired too. Maybe they'll want to learn more about Stoicism and how it can help them live calmer, more resilient, and more fulfilling lives.
If you're interested in what you heard today, we encourage you to check out the works of Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca. Take your time reading them, think about what they're saying, and see how it connects to your own life.
And remember, Stoicism is a journey, not a destination. It's all about constantly improving yourself, learning to handle challenges with grace and wisdom, and ultimately living a life that reflects your values.
And who knows, maybe by embracing a little stoicism, we can make the world a little calmer, a little kinder, and a little better at facing whatever comes our way.
That's a wonderful thought. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Stoicism.
Until next time, keep being curious, keep exploring, and remember, you always have the power to choose how you respond.